Hello everyone and welcome to this quick dungeon guide for Heroic or Mythic Toll Dagor. At the start of the dungeon, you can skip a majority of the trash by keeping left and going across the water. The reason for this is because the crab trash is really annoying as they constantly root people in place with an uninterruptible cast called Squeeze. The alligators are also dangerous in packs because they apply a stacking debuff that reduces your maximum health. If you keep left and follow the wall, you'll be at the first boss. Make sure to clear out the pack of crabs on the right so they don't pull during the fight. The Sand Queen. Her first ability is Sand Trap, which places piles of sand around the area. If someone steps in these, it will deal damage and stun the player for 4 seconds. It is possible for her to spawn traps under her, and these will be impossible to see unless she moves, so be careful about where you run to. After a few seconds, a buzzing drone will spawn in each sand trap. The tank should pick up these bugs when they spawn because they apply a stackable dot with their melee attacks, so DPS should AoE these down quickly. However, when a drone dies near the Sand Queen, she will gain a stacking and rage buff for 4 seconds. It can be purged though, and it only takes a single purge to remove all the stacks. If you don't have someone that can remove enrages, the tank should make sure to have mitigations up during this time, and the healer should keep a close eye on everyone. Her next cast is Upheaval. She will target a random player and then appear at their location. Everyone should get away from that player who is targeted because she will inflict heavy nature damage to them and anyone near them, as well as knock them up. Her last ability is Sandstorm, which deals nature damage to everybody as well as pushes them back for 12 seconds. Continue into the sewers. When you step over certain spots in the sewers, mobs will spawn. You will encounter several more parasites like the one in the boss fights and some vice jaws. Again, these will apply a stacking debuff that reduces the maximum health of the player by 5% per stack. Next, you will be met with an Iron-Tide Thug. Make sure to interrupt their deliberating shout, since it applies a debuff to everyone. In the following rooms, nearly all the mobs will run away at low health, so be ready to slow them down to prevent them from pulling other packs. You can then continue by going straight across the bridge, and then go right. As you go up this next set of stairs, you'll be met with Bile Rat Sea Speakers. Make sure to focus these first and only interrupt their watery dome casts because it will put an absorb shield on all nearby mobs. It is a magic effect so it can be removed, and these mobs will also run away at low health. When you get to the end of this next hallway, you will see the boss. Jess Hallis. His Crippling Shiv is a cast that applies a poison dot to a random player that also reduces their movement speed. The healer should make sure to dispel this. His Howling Fear cast must always be interrupted or it will fear everyone. When the boss starts to cast flashing daggers, everyone should hide behind a wall to avoid taking heavy physical damage. At around half HP, the boss will stun everyone and start letting prisoners out of their cages. When the stun ends, the tank should pick up all the adds, but make sure to drag them down the hallway towards the boss. Follow the boss until he gets to the end of the room and then interrupt his motivating cry cast as soon as possible, or he will continuously apply a stacking buff to himself. However, this buff can be purged from the boss if you do not interrupt it right away. The last ad the boss releases is Bobby Howlis, a mini-boss that will also cast Howling Fear and must be interrupted. Bobby will also randomly pin down and maul a random player for 30 seconds. When this happens, DPS must focus Bobby in order to get him off the player. After he takes enough damage, his cast can be interrupted and then he will stop mauling that player. When the boss dies, Bobby will run off. You do not need to follow him and you can just continue right to finish the rest of the dungeon. When you encounter jailers, make sure to interrupt their handcuff casts as it silences players. They also cast a spell called Riot Shield that reduces spell damage by 75% and reflects all spells, so casters should stop DPS when this happens. In the next room, across the bridge to your right, there is a large pack, but you can skip most of this pack. All you have to do is wait for the patrol to be away from most of the mobs, and then the tank can pull it and go to the bridge to line of sight that ad to the tank. The ad will then follow to the bridge and you can kill her and the Ash Vein officer together. Once those are both dead, you can continue to your right. Make sure that everyone hugs the wall and then go into the hallway behind the shooter. He will light the barrel when he gets pulled, but if you keep running down the hallway, you can get out of the area of effect of the barrel and wait for it to explode. In this next area, there will be cannons that one of the DPS should jump into. While in the cannon, just shoot at the mobs. The cannon will knock up any mobs it hits, interrupting them and dealing damage. Just make sure that the tank always gets aggro of the mobs first, because if you pull with the cannon, the mobs can still hurt you while you are in there and kill you. In Mythic difficulty, however, the cannon will also knock back and injure other party members. So in this case, the tank should pull the mobs and try to maintain aggro on them, and as the mobs go towards the tank, the person in the cannon should shoot at them to prevent them from reaching the tank. Throughout this area, the tank can pull and line of sight the mobs to the cannon. At the end of this area, you'll meet the next boss, Knight Captain Valerie. In this fight, there will be several barrels spread in the room. These barrels are the main mechanic of this fight, as the boss will continuously throw fire around to activate the gunpowder inside. You can pick up the barrels by clicking on them, and you can move some of the barrels before starting. Her first ability, Ignition, places various fire circles on the ground throughout the room. After a few seconds, when the center of the fire reaches the outer edges of the fire, it will explode, dealing fire damage to anything inside, including the barrels. So make sure to remove the barrels you do not want to explode before the circle fills. Her next ability is Cinder Flame. The boss will face a random direction into a large frontal cone of fire, igniting any barrels hit. The final ability is Fuse Lighter, which is a fire dot placed on a random player. The healer should make sure to dispel this. If you have this debuff on you, make sure to stay away from the barrels or else you will set them off. The way to go about this boss is to tank her in the middle of the room if possible, because if you tank her in the corner or near the walls, she can Cinder Flame the entire room and set off every barrel. If she is in the middle, her cone won't be able to take up as much of the room. As for the barrels, it will be impossible to prevent everyone from going off, as she continuously spawns more barrels. So you should try to keep the barrels on one side of the room in order to overlap the exploding ones. Continue forward and you'll see an area similar to the one before Valerie. The tank should just pull to the cannon and one DPS can hop in it. At the cannon, the tank should go up the stairs to pull the other mobs and bring them down to the cannon, as it cannot reach the top of the stairs. After this trash is dead, you'll be at the final boss, Overseer Gorgas. At the start of the fight, Gorgas will poison everyone, and you'll see this bar on your screen. Whenever you move, the bar fills, and if it fills all the way, you will get stunned. Make sure to watch the cannons, as he will randomly activate them. The cannons will slowly turn to face a direction and then fire, so don't be in front of them. Additionally, the boss will buff himself with two different types of ammunition. The first type is Incendiary rounds, which apply a stackable fire dot to players that are hit. His second ammo type are Azurite rounds, which will knock back any player's hit. These effects apply to all of his abilities, while the buff is active. His first ability is Explosive Burst, which will target random players with an AoE. Make sure to not be in anyone's circle. Keep an eye out on which rounds he is using, because if Azurite rounds are active, you'll get knocked back, or if the Incendiary rounds are active, you'll get a fire dot. His next cast, Cross Ignition, creates these black cones on the ground. Anyone standing in them when he finishes the cast takes immense fire damage. Finally, Deadeye, which is a cast that shows a red arrow on the ground and fires a shot at a player that applies a 2-minute debuff that increases the damage that player takes from the next Deadeye by 500%. This shot can be intercepted as it applies the debuff to the first person hit, so make sure to watch who gets targeted. If you see the same person get targeted, have someone else stand in the path to absorb the shot. Not doing so will result in that player getting killed. And that is the Dagor dungeon on Heroic or Mythic difficulty. I hope this guide has helped you out, and as always, thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see you next time.